Okay, our next interview today at the New York Book Fair is Marguerite Goldschmidt, the wife of Lucien Goldschmidt. And I'm not going to ask her very many questions. I'm just going to say, Marguerite, tell your story.
Okay, I'll say good afternoon. Lucien Goldschmidt was born in 1912, so he would have been 100 years old in last month. He was born in Brussels, à la rue de la Toison d'Or. He was very fond of that because it's like a book, you know. And his father was in Brussels. Lucien was like me, 2 languages. And they moved to Frankfurt in Germany after a little while, and then they went to Berlin. His father was a lawyer, and Lucien went to that famous school, le Collège Royal Français, which had students, boys, from all ages, from all countries. Quite a number came from Russia or anywhere. He got his baccalaureate, and then got a job at the auction house of Max Perl in Berlin. And after a little while, things got a little bit, because I'm talking about when he was about 19, and he was born in 1912, so you can figure out. And he, where have I gone now? Oh, at Max Perl. And one weekend, it was on Saturday, he told him, you know, things are getting sticky here. I think you better not come on Monday to work. So you take an attaché case, you say goodbye to your parents, and you go to Paris. Whether Max Perl knew Pierre Berès, you know Pierre Berès?
Yes.
Well, he was part of also the game. He's a very difficult person, I can tell you, but he died also very old. And then Lucien started to work for Pierre Berès. And then after a little while, a few more years, everybody said, his friends said, you know, it's getting very sticky. You can't stay here. You have no permit. You haven't got a French permit, you can't. So Lucien was not stupid, and he got a ticket on a Danish boat, and there were 4 people on that boat, and he went round the world the other way, on the west side. He went first to Egypt, and then he went to the different countries, and his boat at one time got off the sea and just landed in a land, it was really, and broke in pieces. So he was about 2 weeks, I think 2 weeks, completely, well, I don't know how he lived, and then finally a Japanese boat came along, and he landed, he finished his tour, and landed in California. He was apparently in a beautiful one of these lovely hats and a suit. He looked rather elegant, and he only had $20 in his pockets, and he was supposed to have 200. That was the song. He must have been white as a sheet, because if he wasn't accepted, he had to go back the way he came. And the officers said, I don't have to ask you if you've got $200, because look at where you've been in all these countries. And then he must have sort of felt, like a newborn. So he had his eldest brother working at the State Department in Washington, and had to ask him for money, and he came by bus and landed in Washington. Then he came to New York and started a little business. He went to auctions. He started to try and get something, going. I would like here to just mention my father, because he's such an extraordinary man. Do you know, he at 19, he came to Southampton with just sort of diploma. And he was also in languages. He had not been, he could not go to a university. So he got jobs translating this and giving maybe lessons. And he did his BA and his MA, then he became professor at Southampton, professor of French. He went further and got his D.Litt in London and became professor of Romance languages at Oxford. You can't go any higher. The war broke out, the First World War. He wasn't able to be with the forces on the continent, so he was taken and he had to work in London every day because he was translating French and German in different languages. Finally, his health got, it was such a hard job. He took the train home every evening to go back to Oxford and got TB from a nurse coming from the front who was full of germs. He got TB and he was 5 years in different Swiss sanatorium. And he died when he was 47 and I was only 14. We had to sell everything, the house and so on. And I left Switzerland.
Keep going.
Oh, I can go on?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, I left Switzerland, so that is my sort of Swiss sort of background. But I was born in this country.
Uh-huh.
So afterwards, I went to the gymnase in Lausanne, and I went to Geneva, and I got my librarian diploma, and I started at Bristol, England. Then the war came along. You should have seen that first trip from the Germans sending these small little incendiary bombs.
Rockets.
Incendiary bombs. No, I don't know how they came, but they came like it was a whole mess. All the churches were on fire. And that's the one thing which is astonishing for me. I found a house, 2 flat, double flat, for my mother and both my brothers who went to university. And then one evening, when these incendiary bombs came, I was in our house, and suddenly one came through the toit, the
chimney?
from the top, and landed 1 inch from the gas pipe.
Wow. And
suddenly it went out. And I told my mother, I'm going to survive. That gave me such a shock. But I've said that. And then now I will go back to Lucien. He was in New York, and the war started, and he volunteered to become one of the GIs. He wasn't a very strong man, you know. He had difficulty, but very determined, because he wanted to do something to to Hitler. We changed. We started rather small, and then we became Lucien Goldschmidt Inc. So we were rid of Pierre Berès. But we had wonderful shows there. We had that book of Matisse, you know, jazz. We had the whole show of that. Lucien also had another, what is it? The man I told you was, oh my gosh, that's terrible, I can't remember now. He died at 37, you know. The one who did all these at Folies Bergère, what was the name of the painter?
Toulouse-Lautrec?
Toulouse-Lautrec, yeah. Lucien was excellent at that, because he even managed to get the name when he went every year about three weeks or even longer. At the beginning, before we had kids, I went with him. But he did not allow me to even touch a book, would you believe it? He So I understood Madame sits in the armchair and waits till Monsieur a terminé. And then we went. Yet I spoke French like a French girl. And also, I mean, I was trained. I mean, it is amazing. But that was all right. That was his way. Do you know also André Jam?
No.
No, he's one of the best booksellers in France. He's the one that actually started also photography early in life. And he sold it to all these Arabs in London for 6 million pieces each.
Wow.
He did a coup, but he started early. He was a second generation of booksellers. He's still alive. He's probably nearly, not quite my age, but about maybe 52 or something. An amazing man. And Lucien went on having shows, and he, with that fellow from the, what was it? Oh God, I got it. Jan. Pierre. Wow. No, he wrote a book with this man who was at the Metropolitan Museum as in the print section. He was in charge. Nykirk. Was it? No. Nykirk was the, no, it isn't that. Was it Nykirk? Well, it doesn't matter. But they wrote the book together, which is called The Truthful Lens. And that book was selling like hotcakes. Lucien had a show there. It was all books between, I think, well, I don't have the name here. But I mean, early books were illustrated with original photographs. And that book sold like hotcakes. They tried to make a second edition, but there was no money. But he really did a lot for the Grolier Club, and he produced 64 catalogs, plus all the slips. We had shows there of different epoch, and it was amazing, the people that came in. We are very friendly with Bill Hofer. You probably know him.
And yes.
Very difficult man. He used to come the day before Christmas, come to the shop, and Lucien had to spread out several books. So I said, I take this, I take that, I take that. Now you give me 10%. He gave him 10%. Lucien started to think, well, that goes a little bit far, because I am hardly making any money on these books, and he asked me for 10%. So he came again. It was regular, just like a clock, every year. Well, we saw him before too. And then one day, Lucien said, well, you know, I can't give you 10% on this because I'm giving you nearly for nothing. He was so mad, you get this between you. He banged a book, and we have the very long table, which is a very old, made of one piece of oak. It's marvelous, and we have it now in our apartment. And the book broke, but he still came the following year. Lucien decided he would put 10% more on all these books so that he's not going to learn. So he got his result. But that was a very good story.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you have to tell people. This went on. Then in about, he had jazz and other books, I mean. In 1986, we got very friendly with John Russell because he often came, and whenever he came to give a kind of, write a piece on Lucien, it went in the paper. You would absolutely sure that the next morning there was a queue waiting to go to Lucien Goldschmidt because he was so popular. We got very friendly with him, and he left a mark that when the shop closed, that it was a tragedy and so on. Well, That is actually about 20 years ago. No, it is Neston Neff, the person who was the one that wrote with Lucien on the Truthful Lens. You don't know him. He's now at the what is it, the new place somewhere in California. Well,
At the Getty? At the Getty Museum?
the Getty. That's where he is now. I haven't seen him since. At about around 2000, somebody from the Growling Club wanted to write a book. He wrote, you probably know it, it's Patience and Fortitude by Bas Baines.
Nick Basbanes,
Yeah,
yes.
he came to me and we talked about it, and he dedicated that book, the whole page there. That was very nice. I didn't think he would, but there are one or two mistakes there because I read it. But there's a whole chapter on Lucien, and he interviewed me, and I tried to give what I thought would be right, and that's the end. I will just tell you what is very strange with Lucien. He died in 2 days, less than 2 days. He was in the room, he was, about 20 years ago, and he suddenly told me, I don't see myself getting old. And I said, Lucien, but how can you say that? Nature gives you a picture. Every year it dies and it brings new life. You have to sort of do it. But nothing was doing, and he never told me what to do. So I had to do what I could. And then suddenly we went to the doctor, and he came back the next day. He was in bed, and he tells me, could you make me a cup of tea? I said, sure, but real tea. Now I knew something was wrong because he never would have talked that way. I went to the kitchen, and he must have had a heart attack, and he fell on the floor. That's how he died. In a way, I think it was good, because he would have been so miserable with how the world has changed. He was able to be in his gallery. He actually, it's in 1986, I think, closed the gallery in 1986. He decided when he was 75, that was time. He told everybody, I don't want to come out on a stretcher. So we had 4 years of doing what we wanted, and he bought more things, and he was busy, but he was really not happy because he saw himself getting old. But he never wanted to do like I did. I started 40 years ago to do some yoga and some exercises, and I changed my food completely. I think the doctor told me afterwards that I saved him in a way, because at lunchtime he was eating ham and these sort of things, which were not good. But at night, when he came for supper, I had no salad because he couldn't chew on it, but I had soups homemade, and I had lots of vegetables, and all things that were very good for him. Well, so that's it.
Okay, I only have one question for you,
Yeah.
and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to.
Oh no, that's all right.
How old are you?
What?
How old are you?
I am, what do you mean, 99?
Okay, I just...
No, is that all? I'm going to be, in 9 months, I would be 100. But it is not easy, because things go in the wrong direction. Now you have to make a much bigger effort. I still live alone, and I still speak some French to somebody. And what is nice, the young people are willing to ask me, and we have great time just talking French, or, sort of, I'm showing how to cook, because most people don't know how to cook. And I think that if you can still go on doing it, well, maybe all right, but naturally one day, I also make mistakes with my check. My kids now, unfortunately, I don't have quite so much independence, but I can still have them for lunch if they come. And I have continued to take them out at Christmas and also at Easter to a restaurant like Lucien did, because I think it's really important. So this is the blouse that Lucien gave me in a long way. Oh, and also that jacket. He was very good at that because we went to Europe every year. So on the way back, we went to Toulouse, and the woman in charge of the magazine, before I got in, Madame Goldschmidt, we have exactly what you want. Lucia sat down in one of these armchairs as if he was, you know, no, I don't like this on you, and so on and so on. It was really a scream. But we always bought one suit, and the following year it was maybe one dress and so on. But otherwise, during the war, I did all my clothes, and I gave coupons to my to the students because they had no coupons. So I don't know how much I didn't say and how much I was stupid.
It was wonderful to hear this wonderful story, and I hope the people who are going to view this on the internet are going to be as enthralled and enjoy it as much as we have. And I thank you so much for coming.
Well, I try, but I mean, it is, you see, the thing is, you can't be dull.
No, you certainly aren't.
No. And I'm not a beautiful person. I've got a good figure because when I left at the BBC, would you believe the person who was in charge of that section told me that my father had been his teacher at Oxford. I nearly fell asleep. I cried.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe, why didn't he tell me before? I mean, it's so, people are so cruel.
Yeah.
It would have given me such a lift.
Well,
he was the one, my father, at the age of 12, gave me my first lesson in cooking. And he told me, because my mother was sick, she died of also of nervous breakdown. When I was born, she had a first attack. So I didn't have much of a mother, but I had a godmother. In those days, they were godmothers.
yeah.
And that was very nice. But otherwise, I did everything more or less myself, and during the war, I saved a Jewish woman. She was from Europe, one of these countries. And she was at Bristol University, and she got a job there, also in the library. And after one day, the head man got annoyed with her because she was so Jewish, and you know, that's sort of rather nice, but very, very clever in every way. And I said to her, she said, I've lost my job. I said, don't worry, I'm going to see the head man who has just arrived from King's College because they evacuated to Bristol, and they lost all their library in the big hall because there was a double
Stacks.
Yeah, it was done by these people that were in money, in smoking and so on and so on. And I met several of these people, so I went to this man because I knew him, and he said, oh, don't worry, we'll be delighted to have her in the library. She was immediately taken, and when they went back to King's College London, at 80 she was given a big party. So I felt that I did one good thing.
You did a lot more than that one
Yeah,
good thing.
but you know, you can do several things without knowing. When you are in doubt, go to the head person. Never ask anybody who is a second rate. You never get any answer.
Or anything
So
done.
I saw that right from the beginning.